Welcome to the Tipping Point Show. I'm Jimmy Evans. Thank you for joining me today. On today's show, I have with me two of our main contributors to endtimes.com, Dr. Mark Hitchcock and our Israel correspondent, Brian Schrauger. We're going to be talking about breaking news this week in Syria and the implications for Israel and the Middle East, as well as Russia and other countries. I have Mark here in the studio with me. Brian is from Jerusalem. I want to go to Brian first. Brian, tell us what's happening related to Syria there in Jerusalem.
Well, there's cautious optimism or optimistic caution, however you want to phrase it. On the one hand, it's wonderful to see Assad overthrown. He was a great enemy of Israel. He was certainly a tool of Iran. He was facilitating Iran's transportation of weapons, and especially weapons, to Hezbollah. And there were a lot of depots and weapons manufacturing things going on there. In many ways, Iran had made Damascus one of its own centers of power. And it certainly was a center in terms of the bridge or the road, quote unquote, road it had going from Tehran to the Mediterranean. And that road has now been cut off. So Assad has been removed. He was an evil man. There's no other way to put it. The things he did were beyond horrific. So there's celebration that he's gone. On the other hand, this group coming in, they're making nice. You know, their rhetoric is very, we want love, we want peace, we want to respect human rights, we want to give, women don't have to wear hijab, they can go to university. And yet they are a jihadist group, right? So, you know, they do have their roots in Al-Qaeda. And there is some memory, of course, of Afghanistan. Remember when those Islamic when they came in, they said, "Oh, we're going to respect the rights of women," and they had all kinds of nice, positive things to say. Well, there turned out to be a big difference between what they said and what they did, and so that's Israel's concern right now. What exactly is HTS going to do? How will they behave? And it's very impressive to me sitting here to see how quickly Israel moved to do what it had to do to protect its border with Syria, which is, I'm sure they've always kept an eye on it, but they have really moved in quickly. You know, they're building a big barrier now. They've taken the Syrian Mount Hermon, that site, which was Syria in the Golan Heights. They've moved in just a little bit into Syria to establish a buffer zone. They don't want to have an enemy right on their border like they've had with Hezbollah for the last more than a year, or several years actually, but especially this last year or 14 months since October 8, 2023. And they've been bombing, even in Jerusalem, we hear the jets going overhead as they go to bomb in Syria. What they're bombing is the weapons depots, they're bombing the weapons manufacturing facilities, they're bombing Syrian army military bases, right? They don't want to leave any weapons or materiel that has not already been acquired by the rebels to them. So things have moved quickly. Now, it's interesting because in the last 24 hours, it has slowed down a bit, and the media focus here has shifted from, at least for the time being, from Syria to Netanyahu testifying at his trial, which is another subject matter, but that's kind of where the attention has gone here in Israeli media.
Well, that's probably a good thing, you know. I mean, in the sense that you're not being attacked directly. So, Mark, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, great to be here.
Well, talk about the prophetic implications, because Syria. Now, they're not specifically mentioned in the Gog and Magog war,
right?
And they're one of the countries that would accompany Gog and Magog. You think?
Yeah. I think they are. Yeah, I think when you have the many peoples with you,
right.
Kind of Gog-Magog, you have kind of, I call it the outer ring of nations,
right.
You know, Russia and Turkey and Iran, and you have Libya and Sudan. Right. And then I think when it says in Ezekiel 38:6, many peoples with you, it probably includes those inner nations that are there. So I think it's significant for that. I think it's also very significant in just the whole clamoring for peace.
Yeah.
It just continues. It's just more and more chaos and disorder in that part of the world. But it's also a little bit of a reordering and a realignment of those Gog-Magog nations.
Yes.
Because you had Iran and Russia that were present there in Syria. They kind of were the ascendant nations there. Well, all of a sudden, really Iran's whole terror network in many ways is disintegrated. It's being shattered.
Really?
Hamas has been taken down. Hezbollah has been taken down. Now Syria. And really it's through Syria that they were arming Hezbollah. So that's really been cut off. This whole Shiite crescent that they tried to develop has been taken out. They still have these militia groups in Iraq. They still have the Houthis down in Yemen, but basically it's been shattered. And so what's happened, I think, to me it's fascinating. The three main nations in Gog-Magog, I believe, are Russia and Iran and Turkey. Four of the places mentioned are in modern-day Turkey. Well, Russia basically now has retreated. Iran now is basically out, but now Turkey has kind of become the ascendant nation. They've kind of risen to the fore. And they have a 560-mile border with Syria.
Wow.
And they actually effectively control part of northern Syria.
Right.
So they're kind of now the major player. So, just kind of shows us, I think, that as these things unfold, that there's a lot of twists and turns, but it's still the same basic nations that are together. Well, I just read it. There's an article I read recently that Turkey and Russia and Iran are meeting in Doha, which is in Qatar, to kind of hammer out how they're going to withdraw and retreat and get out of this situation. So you still have those three key nations that are mentioned. So it was kind of Russia and Iran. Now it's Turkey, and it'll probably continue. There'll be interplay between those nations, but it's fascinating. But it's fascinating to me how quickly it can change.
Oh my goodness!
Just this was lightning speed. 8 days basically that all this took place. Even caught the intelligence community by surprise. But I do think it has prophetic implications in those ways. I'm going to talk about in my program on Thursday about the Isaiah 17, the Damascus.
Yes.
I take a little bit different view on that than some people do, so I'm going to talk about that in light of these events that are happening. So I'll save that for then.
Good. Well, your show's great. Brian always does a great job. So right now, what's happening? Let's talk about Russia for just a minute. Now, I'm just shocked. President Biden has released over $100 billion to Iran. Mm-hmm. Trump broke them. They were on the verge of bankruptcy when Biden became president. He's released over $100 billion to them, and it's just amazing to me how fragile they are. Mm-hmm. Now, they're enriching uranium right now. They have openly stated they're enriching uranium. I read an article this morning, I think you've stated this before. It is believed, and Brian, I want you to speak into this, it's believed that they probably have enough nuclear material for at least one nuclear warhead. Is that correct, Brian?
Actually, a report came out just yesterday from Israel Defense, a publication called Israel Defense. It said that according to U.S. sources, Iran now has enough fissile material to produce 12 nuclear weapons.
Wow.
It has it right now. So, this is obviously Israel's biggest concern. When the rebels came in and took Damascus and evicted Assad, Israel rapidly moved, as mentioned a few minutes ago, to defend itself on that border. But all of its statements made it very, very clear that it was keeping a very close eye on Iran. As Mark just said, Iran has been crippled. It's been basically taken out, at least for the time being, of having a global caliphate, having the Shia crescent. What must it do to restore prestige? And there's all kinds of evidence that they have been rapidly accelerating the quality of their uranium to weapons grade level. And we heard them pledge just 4 or 5 weeks ago that we were going to do whatever it takes to get back at Israel. Nothing will stop us. We will do anything. They were saying we will go nuclear. They said they had a fatwa against producing nuclear weapons, which is an Islamic decree that we won't do it. Well, Israel's always suspected that they will find a reason to do away with that fatwa. And we saw that argument presenting itself just a few weeks ago when they said, if there's anything that threatens our existence, we will produce a nuclear weapon. So they've already laid out their pathway, their justification around this fatwa to go nuclear. And it looks to me like that's exactly what they're doing right now. They are racing toward the development of nuclear weapons, to become a nuclear power. That will put them right back in the cat seat.
Yeah.
Bird seat.
Well, President Trump stated openly that they should bomb the nuclear facilities, that Israel should bomb the nuclear facilities. Biden said don't bomb their oil facilities or their nuclear facilities. And so Israel had to be careful. I mean, if they violated the Biden administration, if we stopped sending them arms and stopped, our naval assets in that area from protecting Israel, they'd be in real trouble. And so they had to be careful. Well, it's interesting because with President Trump being inaugurated here in a little over a month, it's going to be interesting to see if that creates any more boldness in Israel to bomb their nuclear facilities, or if they're going to wait until he is inaugurated and very quickly thereafter the U.S. and Israel bomb their nuclear facilities together. I read an article this morning that Israel said that Israel does not have heavy enough bombs to bomb the nuclear facilities inside their mountains, but the United States does. And so they would need the partnership of the United States to be able to destroy those inside mountain nuclear facilities. And so do you think that they have to act? I mean, I just don't see how they don't act related to this.
Right. Yeah, those facilities are hardened. In fact, sometimes they have to drop those bunker busters like one after another, kind of one on top of another. But the whole situation in Syria has really accelerated Iran's desire to get nuclear weapons. There's an article in Haaretz that's the title is "As Syria Collapses, Will Iran Go for the Nuclear Bomb to Reclaim Our Regional Deterrence?" So really, Iran has had a couple of things that they've kind of relied on. One is their ballistic missiles.
Right.
Well, when they've attacked Israel, those ballistic missiles, we've seen that those they don't work. Yeah. And then they had Hezbollah, which was kind of their main proxy there to the north in Lebanon to come against Israel. Well, they've been neutralized. Now they've got a ceasefire. Yeah. So Iran now is more and more. They feel more and more isolated. They feel more and more in danger. I really think in Iran right now, I've not really read this widely, but a few people have intimated the idea that the Iranian regime is a little fearful of regime change as well. Yes. Because when you see what's happened in Syria, of course, you had the Arab Spring years ago in Egypt, you had regime change in Libya, and some different places, and now it's happened there that they're fearful. So this is kind of their final card, if you will, that they can play, and so they're accelerating this even more. Because of what's happened. And so I do think that Israel will do something at some point. And I think if President Trump is elected, something will happen, which I heard a commentator the other day, a military commentator, talk about this next month as a perilous period, because they know that when President Trump comes into office, things will change. Yeah. So they've got this window of time, Iran does, when they may try to do everything that they can do to create havoc or to move forward on their nuclear plans or whatever. So I think it's a very interesting window of time right now.
Yeah, it really is. I want to talk about Russia for just a minute. I've got an article here. This is from the Wall Street Journal, and it says, retreat of Syrian forces threatens Saigon moment for Russia. Let me read just a little bit of this. It says, a fast advancing rebel offensive in Syria threatens to dislodge Russia from a strategic linchpin that Moscow has used for a decade to project power in the Middle East, in the Mediterranean, and into the African continent. It also challenges Russian President Vladimir Putin's efforts to portray Moscow as a flag bearer for an alternative global order to rival Western liberalism, and his defense of the Syrian regime as evidence of a successful pushback against American dominance in the region. So now, Brian, Russia has bases, Air Force bases there in Syria, right?
They do, and they've got a big port on the Mediterranean there as well.
You think this threatens that, the regime change?
They certainly think so. I mean, they moved one of their major ships that is used to transport goods in and out off the coast a few days ago, just before Assad was evicted. So, and they've moved out. They're not there right now. Now, that doesn't mean they're gone forever. They may very well come back. There will be a lot of negotiations going on in the next days, weeks with the HTS group that's now taken over. So, yeah, Russia it's one reason that they were able to move in, because Russia was not able to effectively protect Assad. He had basically three. Hezbollah, which was taken out of the equation by Israel. Russia, which was taken out of the equation by its own war in Ukraine, and to some degree Iran, although there were mixed feelings there. But they all disappeared, and that's what allowed this takeover to happen. So Russia's not out of the game, but it is right now distracted and weakened by what's happening in Ukraine.
Well, the regime change is Muslim. They're Sunnis. And there's a natural enmity between the Sunnis and the Shias, and of course Iran the Shia.
Right.
And so they don't get along. Now it'll be interesting to see if there's some negotiation there, if they come up with some kind of an arrangement. But I don't see how, and I agree with what you said earlier, Brian. They're liars. Now these people, they don't have any problem lying to advance their agenda. But when they say that they want women to dress however they want and to be educated and all those kind of things, that's not how the Muslim world works. I mean, the radical Muslim world works. And so related to this new regime, this ISIS basically, or Al-Qaeda, whatever you want to call them, is that, do you believe that they will be a hardened Islamic state against Israel?
Well, they've been fighting ISIS. This group, HTS, has been fighting against ISIS. They broke away from Al-Qaeda in like 2017. Again, they're Sunnis. The Alawite sect that Assad was part of was a little more favorable towards Shia, and that's what Hezbollah. But they have a common enemy, which is Israel, which brings them all together. Yeah. Time will tell. The Taliban, when they came in and we left Afghanistan, they said they were going to allow women to be educated and be more liberal, and none of that's ever happened.
Right.
So what you've said, that they lie about this. They're going to try to do all they can, probably while they're trying to kind of let things settle down there to curry favor with different nations, and for the U.S. not to hit these chemical sites and all that is hard. But time will tell how much they're going to be. But they're certainly not going to be. It's not going to be an open society.
Yeah.
It's nothing compared to a Western country, but it could be less hardline than other places. You were talking earlier about Russia's bases there. I read several articles. Evidently Assad is in Moscow. That's where he fled to Moscow, but that they made some arrangement with him before he left. The Russians did, got some kind of assurances with him about their bases. Now, I don't know really how that works because he's not there now, but they received something evidently that satisfied them, and so they allowed him to seek refuge in Moscow, which I think is interesting. It again shows how intertwined they are.
Yeah, there's so many factions, Brian, within Syria, because I read this morning there's still 900 American troops with the Kurds in northeastern Syria, and then you have a very pro-Turkish sect or region just south of Turkey there in northern Syria. So it could be that one of those sects has some kind of control over those military bases or whatever. So Brian, you have an article I think that you were going to read there.
Well, there are a couple articles. One was that was especially interesting is that as a question was posed in the title, is Turkey set to become the new regional power instead of Iran? So there's already thoughts that Turkey is moving into a place where it can establish a global caliphate. And there has been a quiet, if you will, competition between Turkey and Iran for some time, between Erdogan and Khamenei. Erdogan wants to bring back the Ottoman Empire. Turkey, of course, wants to establish its vision, its Shiite vision of a caliphate, where they bring in, where they lay the red carpet down for the Mahdi, their Messiah figure. What's happened now is it appears this door is open for Turkey to move in and perhaps take the lead with its vision for the establishment of a global caliphate. It's just fascinating because both parties, Shia, Sunni, they want this global caliphate, this global government. So the question right now is who's going to prevail in that vision? The Shia vision by Iran or the Sunni vision by Erdogan? So the question is out there. Will Turkey come in? As far as the rapid change, one article I have said that Iran is now a cornered rat, and that kind of goes to the argument that they may very well be racing toward the development of a nuclear weapon or weapons. And another, I thought, especially poignant sentence in an article by Eric Mandel, who I interviewed 3 or 4 weeks ago. He said, what does he say? He said that things have happened so quickly. The lesson is that those who think they know what's coming next in Syria, and frankly, anywhere in the region, are fooling themselves. Things happen very, very quickly. And that to me is the big lesson.
Brian, for your sake and all the people in Israel, I pray that you do have a period of time, the hostages are released, and that there is peace in Israel, so that you guys can heal and recover from that.
Amen. And I encourage everyone watching, please continue to intercede on Israel's behalf. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the hostages. Pray for Israel's security. As these enemies are being defeated, Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, there are more enemies out there, and the threats, sadly, don't disappear. If anything, in some ways they increase, especially if Iran, for instance, is going nuclear. So yes, please continue to pray.
Thank you. Brian, thank you for joining me. Mark, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah.
It's been great having you guys with me. And thank you for joining me today on the Tipping Point Show. We're really glad that you're here. If you're not a subscriber to endtimes.com, go there right now, endtimes.com. Become a subscriber for $7 a month. We'd love to have you be a part of our community. Also, you can go to endtimes.com. You can donate. There's a donate button there. And you can give a one-time gift, or you can also give a recurring gift that comes in every month, or however often you want to give. It's a blessing to us, and it helps us to continue to do what we do and to reach more people. Thank you again for joining me here today. Mark will have a show that's coming on tomorrow, the Marking the End Times, where he's talking about Isaiah 17 and Damascus, and so tune in for that. God bless you. I'll see you next time.